What if every website out there was crafted to cater for every user out there? I mean, just think about a web that adapted to the needs of the user, the device, the connection, a web that existed as though Tim Berners-Lee had invented something for you. I'm a front-end hero. I'm a dad, a partner, a software engineer, and I'm a huge football fan. It's where I get my escape, and in particular, Tottenham Hotspur. Now, despite being perennial losers, I'm addicted to my football club. I want to watch game highlights, read interviews, news, gossip, and absolute lies. To quench my thirst for all things Tottenham, I visit many sports websites, and they hit you with every kind of media, ads, tracking. If you can do it, they do. When you add together all of the things that are in my life, I'm extremely time poor. I've always considered myself to be time poor. I think everybody does. I mean, we all wish we had an extra free day or an extra few hours in the day. I mean, imagine the things that you could achieve with that extra time. Well, I was no different. And then this happened. And things really changed. Now, I find myself looking for and living through micro windows of time where these two do not need my attention. I mean, we're talking about 30 seconds here, a minute there. But where do these micro windows of time occur? Well, on the sofa, in the park, on the bus, on the metro, in hell, or IKEA, as many of you refer to it. The point is, these windows open everywhere and often without warning, but I have to take advantage when they do. Now, if I sit next to a router, then I can probably get what I want during those windows that I live in. But what if I drift further from the center of the universe and well, this upsets me to think about it and say it even, but what if I'm not connected to Wi-Fi? I mean, it does happen to people, even when they're careful. Well, things start to degrade, and it's not uncommon to have a scene where nothing's loading. This has got to be broken. No, wait, here it is. But now this video won't load. Oh, here it is. It's loading. No, it's buffering again. No, wait, now it's disappeared. It's been replaced by an ad for IKEA. No, actually, wait, it's further down the page, but it's still buffering. Finally, it's loaded. But now one of the boys has fallen and is crying like he's had his leg cut off. Window shut. I got nothing. And this all happens on a high-end device, but not everyone has one. The performance gap can be quite stark. And while you may assume that these devices exist, people don't really have them, do they? Well, earlier this year, Amazon's bestsellers look like this. And from low to high, the price points make it clear that your users have a wide range of mobile devices, and therefore they will have different experiences. Now, we know that there are names for the things that happened during that scene. Things that happened during the page load, like first contentful paint, content layout shift, time to interactive. Now, because we know these things, maybe we make allowances for them. Maybe we secretly curse our peers as careless, but we know about them. Real world people, they don't know. They know them as a reason to not use your site, an annoyance, a pain in the ass. So how can we stop these very real problems and make our end users' lives better? How do we bring about the web that I dream that Tim Berners-Lee dreamed about? Well, for a start, we listen to the ideas of people like the Netcentric patron saint of web performance, Mr. Fabian Krumholtz. He came up with the idea that there should be a universally available piece of JavaScript that would be used to detect a user's device preferences, such as save data settings, reduce motion, tracking preferences, their network capabilities, the device capabilities like battery levels, CPU performance, memory capacity. If each site knew these things, couldn't they start to behave in a way that would benefit all users everywhere and maybe help out a desperate for information father of two stranded on a non-moving bus on Paseo de Gracia? So how could we make this happen? Well, first we found somebody who would take this kernel of an idea and begin to form the checks needed to determine all of these things. That man was Nikolaus Zizis. Now, he was tired of his own bad user experiences and under the charm of Fabian's fancy ideas. And they began to research how we could take this forward. First was the requirements. They were grouped into three categories: user preferences, network, and device capabilities. First came a CSS media feature called Prefers Reduced Motion, which would enable us to detect if the user preferred reduced motion on their device. Now, this media feature is used specifically to, and I quote, indicate that a user has notified the system that they prefer an interface that removes or replaces the types of motion-based animation that trigger discomfort from those with vestibular motion disorders. And these disorders, they're things like vertigo. Next was detecting if a user had enabled data saver settings, which led to the first encounter with the Navigator API. The Navigator API gives us a window to look into the state and the identity of the user device. It has, as you'd expect, a number of methods and properties that can help us establish the state the user finds themselves in, or indeed chooses to view our web applications in at that very moment. And using this connection property of the Navigator API, we get a network information object, which contains information about the user's connection. One of those properties is save data, which will be set to true if the device has it enabled, and that's perfect for what we need. Knowing our users' preferences, we could tailor the experience and make decisions like not loading web fonts, not auto-playing videos, reducing the number of images to nothing but those we would deem essential. All of these adjustments would help a time-poor father sat on the bus creeping towards home through heavy traffic and living with the fear that their child may have just started to talk to a crazy bus person. While still making use of the connection object, we also find a property called effective type. The effective type property gives us a string which contains one of the four values: slow 2G, 2G, 3G, or 4G. And using this, we're able to make assumptions on what we deem to be a slow or fast connection. Built into our code is a config file where we define what a slow connection is. The default setting here is 3G and below, and so we test this against the effective type property, and we return a value indicating slow or fast. Using this config file gives individual teams the ability to change the parameters that they set to measure the threshold. After all, if the intention of this is to help create a custom experience, then the parameters of what is slow and fast must not be set in stone, because worldwide experiences, expectations, and needs will differ. With this knowledge, we could, for example, prevent Tag Manager from being executed on a site and save the required JavaScript files from loading. So what else is going to help our hypothetical man who's now made it off the bus, yet despite being a mere 5 minutes walk from home, has found himself yet again unable to make it there in less than 25 minutes, as he has to walk 2 children directly past their own personal Valhalla, otherwise known as the park. Well, using the Navigator API's device memory property, we're able to make some assumptions and set a low, mid, or high value in our script. And again, I'm going to quote, "The value given by this property is not precise. It's approximated by rounding down to the nearest power of 2. That number is then divided by 1024. It's then clamped within lower and upper bounds to protect the privacy of owners of very low or very high memory devices." In our config file, we set a threshold for low RAM. In this case, it's 4. Therefore, if a device returns a device memory number of 4 or below, then we deem it to have low RAM. We use virtually the same technique to determine the CPU capacity. The Navigator API's hardware concurrency property returns the number of logical processors available. Therefore, we decided that by default, a low-end device would have less than 4, a mid-range device would have 4, and a high-end device would have above 4. And again, this is all defined in the script's config file, so completely changeable for every project. Armed with the knowledge provided by our memory and CPU checks, we could, for instance, deliver Desperate to Get Home Man in the Park, a site that had no animations, no videos, that auto-played, and a reduced level of JavaScript. This would hopefully buy him just enough time to read something before one of his children decided to begin their training as a Hollywood stuntman by jumping from the roof of a small treetop house and breaking their leg. An injury he would quickly discover was not quite so serious after all. Adapting the resources required by an application when users of block tracking could provide performance gains. And again, thanks to the Navigator API, we have a way of finding out this information. The Navigator API has a property, do not track, which provides a value of 1, 0, or unspecified. And this makes it very easy for our script to return a value of enabled or disabled for tracking. With this knowledge, we could, for example, again, prevent Tag Manager from being executed on a site and save the required JavaScript files from loading. So how does all this fit together in the end? Well, let's try and take a look at this in action right now. You can find the ProgUX framework in Bitbucket. It's an NC Labs project and it's called Progressive User Experience Framework. Once you've downloaded the ProgUX framework, you will find a precompiled bundle.js file in the project's dist folder. If you've got no need to do any customization or development work, then all you need to do is take this file and add it to the head of your HTML. The next time your page loads, the script will run automatically. If you want to use this as part of your development, then we've created a dev bundle version of our JS, also found in the dist folder. Again, if you want to use this as part of your development, you simply add this to the head of your HTML, and the next time your page loads, the script runs automatically. To see this in action, we created a demo version of the Netcentric homepage. In the project folder, simply run npm run start demo dev. And now you can open the site in your browser. And this is a completely fresh instance. And we see that the script has run, and in our session storage, we now have an object with a number of properties. All of these have been added as classes to the HTML tag of the page. And having these properties in storage and in the HTML will allow developers to make decisions on their content and resources, however they choose and by what is most appropriate. As this is the dev version of the framework, we've included a settings panel, which will appear by default in the top right corner of your application. Clicking on it allows us to override the detection and see the impact your decisions will have on your users' experiences. In this demo version, you'll see that with an excellent connection and no restrictions, we've got video auto-playing, web fonts, and we've got teaser images as well. If we now decide to alter the parameters, say for instance, enabling save data and slowing the connection, then the experience is changed. We no longer have the video banner or the web fonts, and the teasers have been modified into cards without images. Now, these are just a few small changes, but you can already see that it can have a significant impact. And how you use this to change your users' experience is all in your hands. So with the Prog UX framework, developers have the information that they need to create the best experience for every user. So are there any side effects? Well, adding this script would come at no real cost in terms of JavaScript. Our bundle.js file comes in at around 1 kilobyte, thanks to the use of pure vanilla JavaScript and Rollup.js as our compiler, which creates an IFI. Now, this does mean that we offer no support for Internet Explorer, and we make no apologies for that. Some of these features will not even work on modern browsers, but as this is progressive, we make checks for the capabilities and we fail gracefully. So there should be nothing detrimental coming from this. So how can you start using this? Well, right now we've got the repo in Bitbucket, and that's ready for Netcentric developers. As with anything, the team that have created this believe that we've made something useful, usable, and now we want it to be used. We encourage all projects to add this and to begin to explore the possible performance gains waiting for your users. In the longer term, we aim to push this out to the global front-end community as an open source project and continue developing this, which is something all of you could become involved in, helping to deliver those great experiences to all of your users. Thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to welcome any feedback that you have, any input, and we're going to take any questions that you have offline after the session. But once again, thank you very much.